Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Calvinism channel. And so the title of this episode is a little unusual. It's Helko World, Does John 6:44 Teach Unconditional Election? And now I do teach programming, and so there's something called the Hello World program. When a programmer first learns a new language, he has to write what is known as a Hello World program. And so it's just sort of a play on words that instead of Hello World, I have Helko World, and Helko is a Greek verb which means to draw with some force or effort. And so we're going to see the role that this word plays in the interpretation of John 6:44. Now, you might all know or be aware that last year in 2024, John White and Leighton Flowers had a big debate on the interpretation of John 6 verse 44. And so I would like to show a couple of errors that Leighton Flowers made in his interpretation of this verse. And it focuses on this word helko in Greek, or to draw. But nonetheless, here's the verse. No one can come to me unless the Father who has sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught of God. Therefore everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. So what does this text say? Let's not talk about all sorts of other topics. Let's see what this verse says. Previously, at the beginning of John chapter 6, 5,000 Israelites had been miraculously fed with some fish and a small amount some small number of loaves of bread. Now they are still seeking Jesus because of superficial motives. Their stomachs were filled. They want the bread. They don't want Jesus, who is the living bread. Rather, they're seeking Jesus only because of material blessings. That's not a real conversion. That's not real faith. So Jesus contrasts the false motives of these Jews in seeking him. He shows what true faith is. And so one can only come to faith if the Father draws him first, and in no ways shall the Father cast him out. This passage of Scripture notably doesn't mention having faith as a prerequisite for the Father to choose a person for salvation, which is the free-will theology viewpoint, and which is also a part and parcel of Leighton Flowers' revisionism. And this is the way Leighton Flowers himself interprets John chapter 6, verses 44 and 45. Jesus first rebuked them by saying, "All that the Father gives me will come," implying that the reason they are not being given to come is due to their unwilling to believe all that God had taught them. He is now restating that rebuke more dogmatically by telling them that no one can come to him unless the Father draws them first, which implies they are not being drawn or given by the Father to his Son, which he explains in the next verse is because of their continued refusal to listen and learn from his Father. Now, notice that here that Leighton Flowers is sort of inverting this verse. He's describing the reason why people do not come to, are not being drawn, and he's really just inserting that it is because they're unwilling to believe all that God had taught them. And of course, in this verse, there is no reference to faith or having belief. Rather, what this verse is talking about in a positive sense is that people can only come to God if the Father draws them first, as we can see that even Leighton Flowers himself in the bold sentence admits this. He acknowledges this. Now, some observations that Flowers isn't reading verse 44 and reading in his own presuppositions into the text. Leighton Flowers very commonly accuses Calvinists of reading in their presuppositions or Calvinism into the text, but this is what Leighton Flowers himself is doing with this verse. And again, the reason those do not come is because of their unbelief, but rather unbelief is the natural state that all sons and daughters of Adam are born into because of the fall. So it is natural for them not to come. That on the day you shall surely die, God warned Adam and Eve. And so all men and women are born spiritually dead. They cannot have a relationship with God because they do not do his will. They only do their Father's will, John 8:44, which is what the devil wants them to do. So conversely, it requires a divine work of God first for someone to come to him, which Flowers himself admits. As verse 29 says previously, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he sent. So first God works, and then comes belief. That is part of the ordo solidis in the Reformed theology, that is, the order of events that happen in a believer's lifetime, that first God works, and that causes people to believe. Now, Flowers does make some comments in his book, Drawn by Jesus, on page 28. In a footnote, he says, drawing or luring, not dragging, is here to be understood. He, say the rabbins, I think it may mean the rabbis, who desires to cleave to the holy and blessed God, God lays hold of him and will not cast him off. And so the best Greek writers use the verb in the same sense of alluring, inciting, etc. in Clarke's commentary. Now, you see that this comes from the Sohar, which is a Jewish tradition. It's not the Bible. Now, these rabbis are saying that who desires first to cleave to God, the holy and blessed God, God will then lay hold of him and will not cast him off. So Leighton Flowers is apparently searching for some source to uphold his prior revisionist theology. But he's looking for sources which are outside the Bible. And so he quotes the best Greek writers using the verb to draw, that is, Helko, as we shall see in the next few slides, that these alleged Greek writers, they use the verb in the sense of alluring, inciting, or queuing or trying to convince a person, which Flowers tries to use in his theology to support the idea that man must first make a choice for God, as though God is pleading, arguing, debating with him to convince the man to choose Jesus Christ for salvation. But instead of Flowers' eisegesis, because that's what it is, let's use a better hermeneutic. Let's Scripture interpret Scripture. The Greek word for to draw is Helko, hence Helko World. According to Strong's lexicon number 1670, the word means to drag, draw, pull, persuade, or unsheath. It denotes force or effort. And there is another verse in the New Testament where Jesus says, compel them to come to faith. The same Greek word, Helko, appears in John chapter 21, verse 6b, the second half of verse 6, which describes this very action. So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. So the disciples, they were fishing, and they had such a big catch of fish after Jesus' resurrection that they were not able to draw in or drag in this big multitude of fish. So the word draw does not mean a coaxing, a wooing, or an alluring of people, at least not in the New Testament, for them to make a choice for Christ. So we do not see Leighton Flowers' interpretation neither in John 6 nor in John 21. And so finally, a warning to all those who would add to the Scripture. Revelation 22 verses 18 to 19 says, For I testify to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to these things, God will add to him the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part from the book of life, from the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book. And I think I won't add any more commentary, but I'll just leave things at that. I think what I want to say is pretty obvious. So thank you, listener, for listening to my video, and God bless you.